Hi, students. We're going to be talking about writing a poetry essay for the next 10, 12 minutes. And I got a few things on the board to explain. So basically, instead of just picking a poem and writing about it, I'm going to make you pick a poem not on the list of 100 that I gave you earlier in the week or last week. And you need to persuade us why that poem not on the list is better. So think you could go to Lady Lazarus, you could go to haiku, you could go to a sonnet by Shakespeare that's not on there. There are a lot of different poems that are not on there. Theme for English B. There's just a ton of poems that didn't make the 100 best. So you could pick something more contemporary. Digging by Seamus Heaney. Something by E.E. Cummings, who never capitalized stuff. So he was kind of the beginning of that, where not using capitalization. So find a poem, and then, of course, you need to organize an essay, 3 pages. So let me present the board now a little bit. Poetry essay, 3 complete pages, MLA format, of course, double space, 12-point font, a title, catchy, okay? So choose a poem not on the list of 100 to write about. So again, there are a lot. You can go to poetry.com. There's a whole list there for you to look at. Which poem not on the list is the best in your opinion? Okay. So think of a different one. I'm actually going to speak about one of my favorites of all time, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Now it is on the list, but I'm still going to go through and say why I think it's the best poem. As much as you can compare them. So we're kind of exaggerating things a bit. It's a bit, prefabricated in a way, because would you normally say it's going to depend on the poem and the type of poem it is. Is it a love poem? Is it a hopeful poem? Is it a contemplative poem, etc.? Persuade us using 3 elements of poetry. So you got to use 3 different ones. So let me explain the ones I would use here. So make sure in your thesis you give us the name of the poem and the 3 elements. So I'm going to say theme, rhyme, and tone. And in Robert Frost's Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening, they all end up working together. Okay, so quote poem throughout. So I'll do that. I don't actually have a copy of it pulled up, but I can remember some lines since I had to memorize the poem in poetry or English 102. Okay, so I'm going to be writing about stopping by woods on a snowy evening. I'm going to start with the message. So that would be, after I come up with a quote, write an introduction, have my thesis. That first body paragraph will be about, and you follow the order that you put it in your thesis. So theme. So I'm going to talk basically message. So message, it all works together. So at the end, he's talking about promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep and miles to go before I sleep. And that's repeated twice. I didn't just say it not realizing that, okay? So first, again, message. So it's about promises. It's about keeping our promises. And even though personally, you're there, you're looking at a great view of the snow, and it's peaceful, and you're resting, you're freeing your mind. That can only last so long before we realize, well, we're connected to other people, our families, parents, brothers, sisters, children, spouse, friends, all those kinds of things, colleagues that are really, really important bonds too. Okay, so I'm going to start with a topic sentence that has it. So I'll say, the theme of the poem reinforces the idea that we have other commitments and not just We have commitments to others, and we can't just worry about ourselves. Okay. And then for that paragraph, I'm going to get a quote. Promises to keep and promises to keep. Miles to go before I sleep. Miles to go before I sleep. So I'm going to use a quote in there. Then I might give other examples. It could be from your work, your family. For example, my parents are rather elderly. My dad's 91. He had COVID, but he survived. Now he's got swelling in his legs and something maybe wrong with his kidneys and heart. So I have to be ready to get on the airplane at any time and go to Seattle to see him, And so that's part of the commitments. Even though I have my family here, my kids, my wife, I still have to go. I still have promises to keep with my parents after all they did for me. Right. So that's the kind of the theme. You can give examples. You could come up with other examples. Then I would see if there were any other quotes that would fit in that paragraph. And I'm not thinking of any, so I'm going to go on. So now I'm going to go to rhyme, and then I'm going to start my second body paragraph, and I'm going to say another element that makes this poem so great is the rhyme schemes. And then I'm going to show how, you remember in that poem, the third line of the stanza is what the rhyme scheme is going to be in the next stanza. Okay? So there's the third line doesn't match with the other three lines in that stanza, but it's kind of foreboding, it's kind of predicting what's going to happen in the next stanza. So then that's the rhyme scheme. So what that does is, until you get down to the very end, then also the number of beats on the line changes, the last two lines. So that makes the last two lines, miles to go before I sleep, miles to go before I sleep, is a different number of beats. It's shorter, so it gets your attention. So it leads you to the point of the poem here. Okay, so then I would make sure I have those quotes in there. I explain the rhyme scheme and how the last stanza of Frost's poem has fewer syllables. Okay, so it kind of cuts. It's kind of short. You notice it after the predictability of the first three stanzas, where it's the same number of beats and sounds, and then at the end, so it kind of gets your attention. And that's exactly what the speaker and, of course, the poet Frost wants us to do. And then finally, I would get to tone, the feeling that he gives, that feeling that there are things bigger than individuals. The individual sitting there with his horse and the sleigh, and the horse wants to leave basically because it likes to exercise. It's cold, so it's the shortest day of the year, things like that. And so tone, you want to get that, and you get that all at the end, and it's all reinforced by the fact that there are fewer beats or fewer syllables in the last two lines. Miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep, and it's repeated. So again, make sure you're using quotes from the poem. You can put the line number in parentheses, and be sure to explain your quotes. And probably don't overquote, but make sure you've got a quote or two in each of the body paragraphs. Now, over on this side, if you can see it very well, we have the checklist. So here you go. So attention getter, quote, or proverb. Okay. So I might actually start with quoting President Kennedy when on the campaign trail. He would quote Frost's poem and say, miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep, to say he's got to move on to the next stop, So that kind of reinforces again the whole idea. And then I would have my thesis. here are the three elements that make this poem so great and definitely deserves to be on the top 10 list, probably, my opinion. And then topic sentences, I talked about that. You're going to have a topic sentence about theme, a topic sentence about rhyme, and a topic sentence about tone. Tone, remember, is the feeling that the poem gives. Okay. Quotes in each body paragraph. Finally, conclusion. Remember, so you need to restate your thesis. In other words, this is the poem. These are the three elements I wrote about. Summarize the points that you made. And then finally, broaden your focus. I could go back again to, President Kennedy quoting that poem on the campaign trail. And then I could maybe talk about why he liked it so much. And after all, Robert Frost is the one that read at his inauguration in 1960-61, I think. Okay. You can offer a solution. You can talk about the future, call to action. So I think in a way we need to return to some American poets like Frost and Longfellow. It's kind of been forgotten. And they're definitely good and should be read and remembered in a class like this. And in addition to a lot of other poems. So again, get out there, find a good poem. And I had a long list of suggestions. I might put that on a note. So this is what you need to do. You're going to have till, I think, the 1st of March to get this turned in before midnight. Okay, that's all I have. Good luck and good night.